the year already? I forget. We're doing another year.
No, don't draw me.
I think that's the point, right? We all know we should.
I just maybe we'll visit.
You're frowning.
Oh, no, you
This is you.
Good, that's perfect. Right there. I'm definitely.
I did well with the hair. And then to be fair, Josh moved. It's a first hair. When I bought the house, I can't remember what it was, when I bought the house in '94. Especially when they sort of
Gravity fell away and
passes
around.
I'm just used to that, it's like my project is down. You can have that happen anymore.
Say how much share. Josh is so sweet.
You have one?
Okay.
All right, everybody, I've got a couple minutes after 4, so we may have a couple people that wander in a little late. That'll be fine. We're going to go ahead and we'll get started. For those of you who don't know me, I am Josh Cromwell. I'm the Institutional Repository Coordinator here at the university. And we are going to be talking today about open access in education and in the social sciences. A couple of quick housekeeping things. You should have all received an evaluation form, so if you will, just be sure to drop that off over here by the door on your way out. Also, our next session will be this coming Monday, October the 8th at 1 o'clock p.m. over in Sienna Hall, room 2008. That will be our session on open access in business. So I guess without any further ado, we'll get started, and I will let each of the panelists introduce themselves, and we'll get underway.
I'll start. I'm Michelle Fraser Robinson. I'm an education and human sciences librarian. And I'm Holly Foster, and I am a faculty in higher education and student affairs.
Hi, I'm Alan Thompson. I'm a faculty member in the School of Criminal Justice, Forensic Science, and Security.
I'm Marie Danforth, and I'm faculty in anthropology and sociology.
All right, so we're going to kind of look at a few different angles of the open access conversation. Probably the two biggest things we'll look at are open access publishing and then open education. So we'll kind of start by diving into the publishing side of that. So just as a question to get us started, how is open access publishing viewed in your discipline? Is it something that's encouraged, discouraged, kind of viewed as on par with, say, traditional journals or your subscription-based journals? Kind of how does that work in your area? And whoever wants to start can start.
Oh, okay, all right. I mean, both these people are looking my way.
I know where to look.
I guess I don't have a choice. Well, I don't mind. My first answer out of the chute may be disappointing, but we'll give it a try. So again, I'm in criminal justice, and I'm relatively new to open access publishing, etc. I would say. And I don't know the extent to which it's true in the other disciplines, but I think there's still maybe a fair amount of healthy skepticism about open access publishing, as we might reasonably expect from academic disciplines that are really fond of their traditional publishing outlets. My expectation is that over time that's going to change, perhaps because of the experiences of faculty members like myself who at some point, just in good conscience, could no longer require a textbook that cost about $100. And I said, gosh, there's got to be some other solution. So I came upon this OER model, and have taken to it, working on a second one now, on behalf of the university. But that's, so I think it's going to take, in my discipline, at least a little bit of time for some buy-in from people, so that as it gains, wider acknowledgement, and people become aware of the benefits, et cetera. But one challenge to that, without carrying on too long, is educating our faculty colleagues and peers regarding the amount of time and effort that goes in. So in terms of annual evaluation or promotion and tenure criteria, the expectation is going to be that, that it's peer reviewed, or that it's produced by a reputable publisher within the discipline. And so there's this notion that publishing, kind of publishing your own work is void of any academic rigor or creativity and shouldn't receive any credit. And certainly that's not the case. So I think that's one thing that we've got to work toward in the future.
I'll say in anthropology, it's pretty much the same sort of thing. And I just did a survey, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, that they were asking about that. And they were noting that in so many of the annual evaluation documents that are written up by the departments, they talk about established journals, and it's hard for these new journals to break in at some level too. And also when you're going up for tenure and promotion, you have to talk about the reputation of the journal. And a lot of those don't have the impact factors and all the rest that show the quality of the journal, so that you can demonstrate it to usually more senior faculty who is not used to it. They didn't grow up with that type of journal. So it is going to take a while to overturn, just the way that we like to think of academia as responding to changes in the industry. But I think we're a lot slower than we give ourselves, than we like to admit, I guess would be the other way to say it. So it's going to be a while. And part of it is just what the people who are making the tenure and promotion decisions have as their standards, they carry over to what the younger faculty are bringing to the fray as well.
And I would agree in education it's similar. I think maybe we're moving a little bit faster, but we're all slow movers. I mean, it just is what it is. We see more open access, but I think there's still skepticism. There's this, is it open access? Is it predatory? I don't really know the difference, so I'm going to stay away because I'm not sure. And so I think we're moving that way. It's just slow going. In education, I think we're a little bit better off because some of the other disciplines are seeing a lot of fees that are going to be associated with the open access. And in education, we're not. Obviously, we don't have funds. So if they're going to require us to pay, we're not going to publish there. But I published an article recently with an engineer, and it was in an engineering education journal, and it was about $2,000 that she, as an engineer at a private institution, was able to fund. But I was really surprised that some of the disciplines are charging so much to publish in those journals.
From what I've understood though, some of the grants will cover that now,
Right.
like the NIH and all the rest, so maybe they were able to work through something like that. But you're right, the cost of it is pretty good for most of us who don't have grant.
When she mentioned it to me, I said, I think it's a great journal, but it's not going to happen unless you can get the funding for it. So,
Yeah, that's especially common in the sciences, that a lot of those journals require those author fees to offset their publication costs. And a lot of times they're written into grants, especially with a lot of federal agencies that are requiring the work being made public at the end of that grant. So that's kind of the way that they can write that into the grant to fund some of those publication fees. But you're right, those are not a requirement of the format. That's just those certain disciplines that sort of choose to go down that direction.
and in education, we're really, like I said, we're typically at the bottom in terms of available money. And so I think that's why we're not seeing it very much.
But even though as somebody who's getting on the open access OER train here myself, I would admit that I still have some skepticism. So if I were sitting on a promotion and tenure committee, and I saw that, and somebody had to pay to publish, it would still So even though I'm buying in, even I still have a little bit of kind of sort of, you know, sort of thing. And so again, and I think it's because, and Marie touched on this, you know, you've got some faculty who are long in the tooth, right? You know, and we're probably publishing articles at a time when the pressure, maybe not when the pressure to publish, but when the standard was a little different maybe than it is today. And if they don't see young faculty publishing in the same journals that they published in, automatically they're like, well, I mean, if they didn't get it in such and such a journal like I did, it can't be, you know, and so then you get to, you know, somebody having to pay a fee to publish it. I think that maybe makes them even a little more concerned. So that's an area we got to do some work in. Again, even just educating our colleagues that it has value,
And I deal with that because I am pre-tenure. So for everything that I'm publishing right now, that's exactly what's happening. How does it look? Regardless of the real value of it, how does it look? You know, when it shows up, what is the committee going to think?
Right. It's because the whole open access is just so new that argument is seen as sort of way to remove that you can get it in a better place.
And if this was a promotion and tenure workshop, which it's not, I'm like, how did I get to make it that? But I would give a junior colleague advice to have your publications diversified, right? So you want to have you know, maybe something in the form of a book, something in the form of peer review, something in the form of a course supplement, you know, that sort of thing.
But I mean, you say that, but I'm glad to kind of go down that road because that is sort of the constant refrain we hear when we have these conversations. It comes back to TNP. How is this going to reflect there? I mean, understandably so.
And if as pre-tenure, if we're sort of staying away because we're afraid of how they're going to be viewed, then they're not going to get as much traction because we're sort of that young, not younger, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That younger generation, and if we're not fully in, when is that going to happen?
Yeah, and it may very well take in certain disciplines some of the more established scholars to take the lead to say, hey, look, and lend their credibility.
To legitimize it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think librarianship is a little different. Librarians love free stuff, they want everybody to have access to everything, but, you know, one of the top journals in the academic library field is open access now, the College Research Library. So they, I haven't tried to publish in college research libraries, I don't know if they charge a fee. It is one of the top journals, it is open.
So it would be very favorably looked upon. So librarians and wanting things to be free and available, y'all have a much different lens.
Taking the lead on it.
And so I mean it comes back to like you were talking about before, where with like for example viewing the fees with skepticism. Like I've said before, when we have conversations with some folks in the sciences, they look at an iPad, they think, oh yeah, that's normal, that's just part of the. So you're right, there are some discipline-specific challenges and different viewpoints based on where you're coming from, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do these panels broken out of the disciplines, because depending on what discipline you're coming from, you may view things differently. You have different concerns that, like I said, for you guys, the fees are kind of a question mark. For the sciences, they go, no big deal. Whereas there may be something else that's a concern there. So it's kind of a chance to hear different concerns, different issues from the different perspectives. It's a chance to hear different voices and kind of hear it in the broader context that way.
But isn't in sciences, is it a requirement that they produce something making it open access? Not that they just pay fees, but it's actually encouraged in that regard.
Right, yeah,
Right,
because
so-
like I said, a lot of the grants are requiring that. So,
Yeah, makes sense.
So, I do want to go back a little bit to the question about, oh, sorry.
I do have a question. So how does that trickle down for students? Like if you have that hesitation, we're not fully, I say complying, but for not fully going down that road, would you encourage your students to go down that road? Like would you encourage them to look at open access resources for for all of their papers and that sort of thing, or do you still ask them to diversify from their sources?
For me, as long as it's peer reviewed, that's the marker for the students. And I work only with graduate students, so I'm very focused on that. And typically, as they're researching, they're not even going as far as understanding the access level. They're getting it from the library database, it's being flagged as peer reviewed, and for a lot of them, they sort of stop right there. That's a good source. And so I think for my students anyway, they're not as aware of this whole conversation. The library has access. They don't typically know if the library paid for it or if it's free. It's just there. I don't know if it's different for you guys.
Well, one thing that's also very nice for students who just need to get things out there too. So take advantage of the fact that it's available, and you also possibly, when it goes out, you might get more feedback because it is more available to people. You don't have to pay $150 a year for the journal or whatever it might be. So I would say to encourage your students, to definitely look into it.
I think it's a great supplement for the databases, so we're not so limited that there's so much.
Yeah, I mean, another angle too that some research has looked at is that it's a way to possibly see a citation boost as well. The more people can find the article because it's freely available, the more people are going to have access to read it and cite it also. So.
I would encourage maybe at a graduate level. I would encourage students, to look in the various areas. But my litmus test would always be just, is it on target, right? So is it on target and is it time? Is it time? Or is it, well, not necessarily. Is it timely? Is it on target and is it the most definitive source that that you most credible source that you could find?
We get it a little bit with the Catalyst, which is the undergraduate research journal, and that's online. And we hear every once in a while that students in the sciences are told by their advisors, don't publish in the Catalyst because of issues of trying to republish someplace else. And I keep on wondering, though, how many of the students get published at other places, in the sense that this is a very friendly, it is peer-reviewed, and the students would be good to take advantage of it, rather than thinking they're going to publish in Science or Nature or something along those lines. And so it's accessible and it's supported, too, to start out with. And I think that's a nice way, again, to kind of teach girls that.
I don't think any publication is a good.
Yeah, for an undergraduate, definitely.
Right, yeah. And one of the things, like for example, Catalyst does not claim the student's copyright. They do not transfer the copyright to the journal. The student keeps the copyright. So if they want to do other things with it, they're fully allowed to do so.
But it is one of those instances where the reputation, because it's online, and also probably because it's undergraduate, I think the professors feel that it isn't quite as worthy as other things might be.
But quite frankly, I mean, just the same way you can say with a dissertation, for example, you're going to do some revision, you're going to do some adapting to the dissertation before you're publishing as the book.
Right.
You're going to do some building, you're going to do some adapting with an undergraduate article before you publish it in a journal somewhere as well. So it'd be pretty different, I would think, the finished product from what was in that journal.
But even Catalyst has good hit levels that
Yeah, it does.
like that.
Yeah.
So people, even though it's just here and it just doesn't have a fill up, people are using it.
All right, so we may revisit the journal bit a little later, but I do want to give some time to the open education discussion, open textbooks, that sort of thing. And actually, if we want to, I don't think what I'll do is throw to Dr. Thompson first, because you've actually done a couple of open textbooks. You've written one and are working on another, so maybe you can talk a little bit about that, and we can have a little bit broader discussion about some of the potential and the opportunities there.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly glad to, and consider myself fortunate to have had that opportunity from the library, for which I'm grateful. And so that again, that was precipitated by several years ago asking students, how much was your book this semester, and they gave me the amount, and I said, well, don't everybody go at once. But in the next day or two, make your way over to Barnes & Noble and discreetly return your book, get your money back, and we're not going to use that book this semester. I said, but the payoff is you're going to be taking a lot of notes. And so then the next semester, I think I went to like a custom published product with Cengage, where I selected chapters from their library and put those together, and that was about $60, which is a little more, reasonable and easier on my conscience, but that too crept up. And so, but I always thought as a faculty member that I had to require a textbook, right? Something that they, I thought that if I didn't, that my colleagues would think that my course did not have rigor or, something along those lines. Well, then I come across, the OER grant program here at USM and submitted an application. I encourage everybody to do that if you haven't. Estimated what the cost savings would be and that sort of thing. Went to work on that. Had the great, the wonderful assistance from Ann Hudson, who is no longer at USM, but she did such a great job on that at helping me with that one, that of course I insisted on sharing authorship with her, and so I've asked her to work with me again on this second one. And so that's even better than pulling these chapters from an existing publisher's library. You get to tailor your own material.
Did you write it from scratch, or?
Yes, and so both of these, and again, I don't characterize or label the material, the content as chapters, as much as I label and refer to them as sections. So they really are topical and topical and introductory as a foundation for then what we will talk about, for then what the material we'll cover. And so it's embedded. It's got embedded links in it, etc. To all sorts of resources, government documents and things. So no expense for students, and they seem to be happy and grateful for that.
Did you place it with Creative Commons? So is it available widely?
Well, certainly it's in Aquila, so Josh has pushed that out. And
Yeah, if you go to Aquila, you'll see a link on the Aquila homepage. It's aquila.usm.edu if you aren't familiar with the site. You'll see a link right there on the front page. It says open textbooks. If you click that, you'll see that textbook there. So
I think that's a lot of the value, is that we can share a lot of this information. There's this sort of old school idea that, no, it's mine, and so I'm going to teach it. But, I mean, to me, it's more valuable if we're all sharing what we're creating.
Sure. Yeah.
It just makes sense. I'll mention, so I don't use sort of OER here. I teach such a small number of students, so sort of 15 students in a single graduate course that's not really replicated by other faculty. But I did teach for years before I came here, and I taught history at the community college. And we use OpenStax, which is a free textbook that is created through Rice University, but it's open access, and it is amazing. It is far better than any of the publisher textbooks, and they even include like the Canvas cartridges and all of the instructor materials, and it's absolutely free for the students. So it's like, why would I make them purchase a textbook for any reason when the one that's free is better? And there are a few students who are like, nope, I need a print copy, I absolutely need one. It's $52 on Amazon, by all means. But they can download it on Kindle for free, they can look at it online, they can download it on their computer, and it's wonderful.
How does Rice pay for it, though?
It's a grant.
Okay. And do they have it on a whole range of topics, or is it just education?
They have, but it's mostly sort of the standard, but there's like algebra, calculus, biology. Yeah, physics. And so what I'm teaching is US history like 1 and 2, and it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect.
What number of your students want that, the hard copy? Because when that's it? Because we've always found that students have complained if we tried to do too much online. And when we have articles that you post, they all print it out, and that's why I was wondering if it was a success or not.
One student, everybody has been absolutely fine, or at least only one that has told me, because I'm, and I still teach one class a semester for them. Obviously, it's online. And so maybe the fact that it's online, those students are more comfortable with online. But when they say, I really need a print copy, then buy it, and it's still cheaper than most of the textbooks.
Can you highlight it and mark it up and everything?
Yes.
Just comments? Okay.
Because you can download it and then do whatever you want with it, versus if you want, you can just look at it on the computer without downloading it. But if you put it in Kindle, you can do all of that as well.
As the audience, how many of you would like that format, or would you be comfortable with that?
It's free, right? Like,
I have a motto, if it's free, it's for me.
would any of you actually buy the hard copy? Are you sort of a hard copy? I mean, I'm a hard copy person. I'm probably the one who would buy it.
It depends on the type of book. Textbook, I could totally do online.
Yeah.
Now, if it's like a book that I will read over and over and over and over, yeah, I'll like just this little copy
And that
and I
makes-
I just like the smell of books.
That's how I am. I'm like, I really want the paper.
My astronomy professor at USM used OpenStax last year, the whole year, and the class loved it. It was easy and affordable.
Was that Dr.
Sorolla.
Sorolla? And Mike Vera over
Yeah.
in physics is doing that too, and he's just, he's rocking and rolling on that stuff.
And his team will be supposed to be on the STEM panel we're doing in a couple weeks, so if you want to hear from him, then be at that panel.
Who writes the textbooks? I was going to ask.
I don't know who, do you know enough about it? I know it's done through RISE, and I don't think it's a single person. I think it's a collaborative effort.
So they get updated, and that's what I was wondering, if it's a single book, and then everybody just keeps kind of authentic it.
Like a Wikipedia.
Yeah, sort of.
But it's fantastic. I mean, to me, it's far better than one that I would write myself. Obviously, I think I would do a great job, but probably not as good. So I think it's fantastic. It would be great if they would do them in more subject areas.
It's mostly the sciences
Yeah.
right now. That they need to get some humanities
Yeah.
subjects.
Sure.
There's so much value.
Well, Josh, if I can maybe steer us a little direction. So one thing I've experienced then is, and I love the motto, slogan, if it's free, it's for me. But the very first semester that I rolled this OER out, if a student has to go buy a $100 book, they've got something invested in it, right? So they're like, man, I need to get some of them. I need to get my $100 worth out of this book, so I'm going to read it, right? Things that are free, has this subliminal message that there's no value to it, right? So students thought if there was not a required hard copy of the book, and this thing is free, that there wasn't much importance placed upon it, and they were disavowed of that perception after test one. Right? So they're like, ooh, yeah, I guess I better go look at it. Just because it's free doesn't mean it's not important,
Right.
or and so we've got to. I think that's another area that we've got to work in is counteracting the natural, right? So if somebody gave you a free koozie and you lost it, you might not think anything about it. But if you bought your own Yeti, koozie thing, and you lost it, then you're going to be really upset. So for them to understand, just because it's free doesn't mean it doesn't possess valuable information.
Basically, just explain the rationale of why I buy cheap sunglasses. I lose them and I don't feel like I'm out very much.
Exactly.
And I would also say, my goal has been to start working on my own textbooks, so I admire the fact that you're on your second one.
Well, then now again, I've had wonderful assistants.
Yeah, one of the things that throughout the people who go through our program, they're actually partnered with one of our research librarians to help them with identifying resources and things of that nature. So It's kind of a little more collaborative in that way. It's not just you on your own trying to figure it out.
And I like the idea that, that you can create an entire textbook on Creative Commons free license content. You can actually put it together and not have to necessarily write anything. I mean, of course, it's better when you do write it, but there's so much out there that you can use with no problem.
One of the things that I've heard other faculty talk about as well, from the faculty end, is that you don't have to deal with versioning as much either. So if you teach a course that really doesn't change that often, so like an introductory course where, for example, with Dr. Beer in physics, where the laws of physics aren't exactly being rewritten on a regular basis, so that intro text is pretty much going to stay the same. You don't have to deal with, all right, a new version of the text is out, now I've got to go update all my problem numbers, I've got to update all my slides, all my other resources to match the new page numbers, the new exercises. It stays consistent. So it's a little less work for you as the faculty member, as the instructor as well, because you can have that consistency with the resource.
But bringing it back a little bit to promotion and taking just to close
Yeah,
the loop,
yeah.
the problem with, you invest a lot of time in that. Once again, the reputation is supposed to write your book from scratch.
Yeah, and also that comes the question is, how are you credited for that? Are you credited for that effort? Because it is a lot of work, it's a lot of time. And
For us, it happens after the tenure process,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
It's sort of on my list, but it's not gonna happen in the next year and a half. Like, it's gonna have to wait, which is sort of, disappointing that that's how it turns out. But the reality is, I can put all that time into it, but how is it really gonna be viewed and, so. Again, that's a TMP conversation, right?
I don't recall from, I guess it would have been just the most recent annual evaluation. I'm already tenured, and I'm not worried about that. But for annual evaluation purposes, right? So each year you need to show some scholarly productivity, some creative activity, and I'm not necessarily sure how I was credited this, what, so, I mean, but I suppose if somebody said, well, that's not a book and that's not a journal article, so you're really not getting any credit for it, I'd have to take some issue with that. So I don't know, but I just, I do what I think is right, or do what I think is good, and assume that other people are going to see the balance.
Before we move on, since that kind of does give us a good pause moment, does anybody in the audience have any questions that you want to toss out? All right, well, where I want to kind of go, since we're sort of on the subject of open education, is maybe talk a little about, especially those of you who are working with students who are going to be educators, about maybe encouraging them toward, or showing them any opportunities that may exist there for using those open educational resources in some of their classrooms once they're in teaching positions. Have you done anything along that line?
Have I done anything?
Well, just whoever wants to,
We're going to look your direction this
Well, I
time.
would say one of the things,
I haven't.
I'd say one of the things you could talk about, because you've done some research into some of the K-12 resources that are out there. So
Yeah, there are lots of K through 12 resources. There are 2 or 3 really good sites, one called Curriki, which is excellent, one called CK12, which is my favorite. In CK12, you can actually create your own textbook, just like we were talking about, OER Commons.
Creative Commons.
Creative, yeah. It's called they call them flex books, and I've actually gone in and created, just for presentation purposes, created a textbook. I can't remember what the topic was, of science, but it makes it so easy to pull materials from that entire site. It's a huge site, and add them to your flex book or your textbook.
You really get to pick exactly what you want and avoid everything else.
And there, OERs in K through 12, they're catching on. There's an initiative right now called Go Open. It's a federal initiative, and certain states have latched onto that. Certain states have created OER repositories for K through 12 materials. I think there are 20 states now that have created the OER repository. And no, Mississippi. Although the Columbus, Mississippi School District is what is called an ambassador district, and they will assist other districts that want to jump on the OER bandwagon. That you can go on the Go Open site, and there's all sorts of information on how your school district can jump on the OER bandwagon and start using OERs in the classroom.
I'll say too, at the community college where I still teach a class, and I was mentioning this before, the push for OER is such that if you're not using open access, you're really getting a lot of pushback. There is, you know, and I think part of it is the demographic of the students that, you know, financially it's beneficial for them in terms of just sort of, you know, the access to the education. But if you're still using a textbook, you're going to hear about it every semester. Like, you know, there's too many other options out there. Why are you doing this?
I teach a course in the spring that's teaching anthropology, but I'm inspired now that we review textbooks, but they're all the standard textbooks, and it sounds like not only is it better for our students just to know what's out there, but what also might give them skills that they need to get a job. Because more often they're going to be teaching at the community college doing adjunct work rather than becoming a full university professor, since that's decreasing provision.
You know, a few years ago, the experience was not lost on me that I asked students to get out their phones, right, to Google something. I've done a lot of brand placement and promotion today, so I promoted Google, I promoted Yeti, and so I hope my checks, I'm sticking in the camera, I hope my checks are in the mail. But so they were going to Ask Jeeves. Listen, I don't even know if Ask Jeeves is around anymore. So I told them to ask Jeeves
That check may bounce.
something. And a student didn't get their phone out. And so I'm like, why aren't you getting your phone out? I don't have one. And so then I you know, of course I felt badly. But a lot of this hinges upon and assumes that you know, that students have, you know, technical support. Now again, you know, it may seem implausible to us, right? So even if the student says, well, I don't have a personal, well, you can go to the library, this, that, and the other. But there are some students out there who may not have some sort of reliable internet access at home, or they may not have a laptop that they can download that to, and they may not have the financial resources to be able to go, you know, to go print it, et cetera. So I think we still need to be, you know, still need to be sensitive to that, or even just, you know, if you say, well, I don't have a computer, well, you know, go to the library. Well, again, that for some students that might still be difficult. That might still be an obstacle. That might still be an impediment to their access. So we assume that just because it's in Aquila, it's online, it's, you know, somebody from around the country could access it. That doesn't mean somebody sitting in our classroom.
But even if they print it out, the $52 is still cheaper than a regular textbook.
Sure, yeah.
And
And
often,
presumably-
what we're doing, like, it's largely for the online classes. So if they're in an online class, then we know that they have online access. And so it's sort of like the first wave to sort of moving towards this is the online students. And then if you can kind of get it working there, then into the face-to-face classes. But we started with online, and again, that's where I'm at, that it's just an expectation. Sadly, a lot of students only have a cell phone now, and they're doing everything on a cell phone. They're reading all the material, they're writing papers, they're doing everything on a cell phone, which is a conversation in its own. Are you seeing that too?
I'm seeing it, but it's definitely not for me.
Yeah, it's,
I can't see well.
Well, tell us, Josh,
I
a little bit
can't do it.
about cost savings for our students, what we've seen here at USM.
Well, do you remember what the number, I don't remember what the number was for yours off the top of my head. I've got it, I'll get my email, but I think, altogether, just over the course of the big one we're looking at is we've got a group of faculty in math that are working on an open textbook for the college algebra, the 101 section. I think there's a 101, the 101 lab now is kind of how they restructured that. They're working on for that once that one's fully realized, you're looking there at the fact that every single student's going through there, you're looking at something like $300,000 per year in savings just off that one class, because you're replacing that textbook, which is, a couple $100, plus whatever access code for the homework system with a free alternative, times all the freshmen basically coming into the university, and it adds up in a hurry. I mean, even with a couple of the upper level courses we've had, we're still looking at like, I think $50,000 over the course of a year or two. So,
Does Barnes and Noble have any say in all this? Because I'm just thinking somebody isn't buying their textbooks at the store.
well, one of the things that we talk about a lot whenever I talk about open textbooks are the fact that the biggest threat to the bookstore is Amazon. It's not the open textbook. That most of the students nowadays are going to Amazon or going somewhere else. They're getting either like a used version or a textbook rental. For example, the case study that I always give people is that we had a librarian from UMass Amherst down a few years ago. They're one of the largest OER programs in the country. And she was also part of the committee that determined the textbook vendor provider for the campus. And she said that they actually had Amazon come in as one of the representatives presenting a plan. And what Amazon did was they brought in this data looking at all of the surrounding areas basically, and they said, here are all your students that are buying their textbook from us, and you're not seeing a dime of that. So what they basically pitched to them was, partner with us, the student can go on Amazon, buy it, they can rent it, whatever version they want to get. You as the school get a certain percentage of that sale, and we'll overnight ship it for free to the student right there on campus. So that's what they ended up doing. So Amazon is going to be the bigger challenge to the bookstores than the traditional, than the open educational resource market is going to be, at least for a while. And the other thing too is, if you look at the profit margins on textbooks, most of that profit's going to the publisher, not to the bookstore. The bookstores aren't really seeing all that much profit off of the sales. It's the publishers that are reaping the bigger benefits.
They're getting it off of logo gear and key.
Exactly, right, exactly. It's
Getting them into the bookstore.
right. There was an article in the Chronicle a few years back that spoke to one of the bookstore managers, and it actually had the statement that in terms of profit margin, she realizes more profit by selling bags of chips than by selling textbooks. So,
The bookstore still doesn't like to hear us say Amazon or, get it somewhere else. It's sort of we've been told, that we don't want to encourage other sites.
Well, that only encourages me to do it more,
Yeah.
right? So
I
we're gonna
thought it
take
was
this-
just me.
We're gonna edit this following diatribe.
Okay, so instead of going-
But
Who told you that? Was it?
It's sort of over in education, it's kind of, that's the conversation.
Okay, so it's not official. It's not like you share
It's
something.
not
Okay.
So the university may have some relationship with whoever the textbook vendor is on campus, but I don't, right? And
And I care about the students.
yeah, right. My concern is more about is more about the students, and so either I seriously doubt that so if the book I was using was $100 and the bookstore is realizing maybe 10%, maybe 5% profit on that,
yeah.
I doubt the $5 per student that they're losing is going to sink the Barnes and Noble ship. And so I'm perfectly fine with something free or if even so before I started working on the second book, I still required a texture. So I had OER for one class, but I still required a book for the second one. And that's a kind of a standard classic book in the discipline of criminology. I said, man, you can go find the previous edition or 2 or 3 down. Like nothing, the stuff from the 1700s hadn't changed, right? Go get that earlier version. But for me, again, it all comes down to I'm not too concerned about how others may be and need to be about how my peers view the quality and scholarship of it. But again, for me, it comes down to what's best for the students.
I love it when I can tell students the previous editions on Amazon were like $1.
Yeah.
So, and then suddenly they'll be gone. Like,
All right, everybody will-
now, they're like, well, now it's
Everybody
$5 for the cheapest one.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if it's $1 for the previous edition and $100 for this one, to me, that's a no-brainer. Because they change them, you know, they change them so little that
Right.
it just, yeah.
Yeah, because that's the other thing you run into, going back to the conversation more about versioning, is that's another way that the publishers end up making a lot of their profit margin is, let's take the same material, tweak it just a little bit, and then repackage it and say, okay, now you have to have this edition. And so,
Well, and so Josh, I want to come back though, and I was going to ask you to talk again briefly, as if I'm the moderator.
My
if
panel's
you-
been hijacked.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But no, you always make a good point in these about how OER and OER can be a recruiting tool for a universe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, if you're a student and you have limited resources financially, and this university can say, hey, come here, you can take all these classes you need, and it won't cost you anything to buy your to get textbooks, versus this one that says, all right, here's your tuition, plus here's what textbook's going to be, here's all that. Which one's more appealing? For example, for those of you who are familiar with the textbook program, there's a statewide initiative that Ole Miss does every year. That model is based on a community college system in Virginia called the Tidewater Community College. Oh, okay, perfect.
That's where I teach using OpenStax. That's
Perfect.
where I
That
came
makes
from before I
sense.
came here.
So Tidewater came up with something called a Z-degree track. What that Z-degree track basically means is zero cost, textbook cost to get your degree. So if you come into that college and your major is whatever, if it's a Z-degree program, then you can get from day one to graduation without paying $1 in textbook costs. And that's a huge recruiting tool that you can use. It's something you can absolutely promote to prospective students to say, hey, look, here's this opportunity we offer to you. It's going to be a lot cheaper for you to come here than to go somewhere else.
And my son attends JCJC up the street, and 90% of his textbooks are online books rolled into the tuition.
I was just about to
There's
say that John
no-
does a very good job. of
You
that.
know, every semester he brings me this list, and I'm like, do I have to buy these? No, they're all included. He just downloads them through Canvas. But it's, I mean, every semester it's, what is that, $400 or $500 that we don't have to spend on books. I don't know how they're paying or how it works on their side, but it's been fantastic.
And it does work with Canvas, so Canvas is
Yeah.
cooperating.
Yeah, so, yeah, he downloads them all through Canvas, not on external sites. So they're working in the right direction.
Any questions at this point? All right, well then we'll move on to our last topic of the day, because we're getting a little bit close to the end of our time. And I just want to think a little bit about maybe some opportunities that exist in your area, maybe the future, kind of where you see this headed maybe in the next 5 years, for example. And that could be on all of what we've talked about so far. So maybe some opportunities for open textbooks to maybe take on more in your area, or where you maybe see publishing heading as time goes on. So maybe do some of the faculty now going through the tenure process, once they're on the other side, become more open to those models. I mean, so very general, very kind of vague, broad question, but where do you kind of see us headed?
I was going to say, in anthropology, we've been talking for a long time about trying to do our own book, and these resources would make it much more accessible than before, because we did that about 5 years ago, and I don't know how much of this was available. So I think it's something we definitely will look into.
And for something like, one of the things that I would love to see us have with our program, I would love to see us have some of the, especially some of the intro level courses, have some of the instructors partner on a proposal. So a few different instructors that all teach, say, a 101 or whatever.
Yeah, we
Groups
use one
jointly
textbook.
submit and then just kind of together build this textbook for all of those sections. Because then the impact is tremendous and the workload's not as bad because it's split over multiple people.
And that's what we do, we share a textbook, but the textbook's actually like $20,
So that might be a prime opportunity then for some of the faculty in your area to partner together and say, let's take this on. And
I would like to see more humanities folks take on open textbooks. There's not a lot of humanities open text out there.
Why do you think that might be? It's because it's not as kind of straightforward as some of the sciences might be, setting up physics and
Could it be funding? Could it be a funding issue?
My guess is that those disciplines are very traditionally entrenched. Right, so in history, they're gonna tell you, you know, it's gotta be a book. It's gotta be a book, and anything else is just not.
Good. But I certainly see some opportunity because I think of something like literature, for example, where a lot of those literary works are in the public domain at this point. So you could find free versions of a lot of those texts, just kind of pull those together, and then you've got open.
The same with art history.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about two different things. One, we're talking about adoption.
Yeah.
The other, we're talking
Yeah,
about,
that would have to be
production. I see at least two things impacting the future here. One is most faculty members, at least the ones I know, are pretty independent, don't like to be told what to do, right? So it's basically, well, you gotta support Barnes and Noble, you're going to do something other than support Barnes and Noble, right? I don't think Barnes and Noble's gonna send me a royalty check, but I'm still Googling yet. So for example, you know, the College Board has a policy. It wants us to, you know, adopt one book, even if the course is being taught by different, you know, it used to be that when I got here, that, you know, if two professors were teaching the same course, they could require, you know, two different books. Well, now they want the same book across all sections of the same course. And so to the extent that a professor doesn't like that, a faculty member doesn't like that, they can say, well, that may be possible, so I'm going to go do my own OER, right? So I see, if, to the extent that faculty are frustrated by policies that they see as maybe limiting their choice of materials to use for the course, they may say, hey, enough of this, being told what to do. I'm gonna go develop my own, right? So it works around that issue. The other thing is it's kind of like an online education. So I'm kind of old. You know, I've never taken an online course, and I will, unless somebody forces me to, I'm not going to teach an online course, right? But the faculty, the new faculty who are coming in behind us, have taken online courses, and the professional expectation now is they teach online courses, right? And so they are coming from a different environment than even those, you know, who are maybe 10, 15 years ahead of them. And so I think it's going to be the next generation of scholars behind us who are going to take off the traditional blinders and are probably going to put the steam in the OER locomotive to get it down the tracks. I think it's going to be that group because they've come from a different framework.
And,
that experience.
and one thing I've noticed about young faculty is they're much more passionate about making education accessible to all. Whereas more in my generation, it was everybody went to college was 18 to 22, and it wasn't seen as much of just a public right of sorts, but just if you work hard, you can get enough money to pay for it yourself. And we didn't think about those that couldn't pay for it as much, partially because you didn't have the options. I mean, the internet certainly given us a way to make it more accessible, but.
I wonder too if it will be impacted by competition as more and more schools offer these completely, you know, free textbook options. At some point, other schools are gonna have to do the same, or they're gonna lose those students. They're gonna go to where they are free. I don't have anything to support that. That's just my guess.
It's the American way.
Right.
I think
Where it's free, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think across the country, the academic market is saturated, so that universities are fighting one another for every student, hopefully qualified student to put in a seat. And eventually, and I think we're either on the leading edge of that or we're right on the bubble of it. We don't know it. Eventually, you're going to and higher ed is going to run out of the conventional recruiting mechanisms and tools and incentives, et cetera. And this could likely be, not unlike Tidewater Community College, it could be the next emerging recruiting hook, you know, mechanism, because the old school stuff is starting to fizzle out.
And I wonder too how much maybe, because one of the things that I've seen in other parts of the country, there tends to be more, I guess, student-driven effort towards some of these things too. And I'm not sure if students here are quite as aware of some of the options that are available to them in terms of, say, OER, for example. Like, I don't know if there's a lot of advocacy that goes on among students here. And so I think that could possibly be something that would change the conversation as students become more aware of, oh, you mean I could actually be having a free textbook with this class instead of paying 100 whatever or 200?
Kind of begin to demand or respect.
Yeah.
And my guess is there are probably some schools in the Northeast or on the West Coast where that's pretty standard, right? So like if you require a book, they probably give you a strange look.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm also thinking that if we have we have so many community college transfers, that sounds like what JCJC is doing, and our students aren't going to know about buying physical textbooks.
And they're
They
gonna
just
be
might-
shocked.
Yeah, but they just start by demanding it just out of innocence rather than trying to be politically active about it.
Sure.
And isn't JC given a tablet too?
He was not given a tablet, but he started 2 years ago. So if that's a newer,
Somebody's given a tablet, is it maybe Pearl River?
it might be Pearl River, with the idea that, you know, if you don't have the technology, we're gonna give it to you so that you can access those books, which,
And this is
A recruiting
yeah.
tree.
I noticed a subtle change on the billboard that day, so it's no longer Jones County Junior College.
No, it's Jones
Oh, yeah, I've
County.
noticed that too, yeah.
Yeah, we were at Jones County guys. It's Jones County College, so they're leading change.
Free State of Jones.
All right, any final thoughts or questions from any of the audience? All right, well, we're pretty much at the end of our time anyway, so please thank our panelists for. Just remember to fill out the evaluation, drop it off on your way out, and if you're interested, like I said, our next session will be Monday in Siena 2008 at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So thanks again for being here. See you later.
Thanks to our moderator.